girl on fire. I'm not a victim, a girl on fire. I'll stand my ground, girl on fire. I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm every woman. I have taken up arms and I choose to defend all that I hold dear. Independent and strong, you will not keep me down. You can't break me.
Lynette Oxley here for Tac Shack Tactical TV and Ghosts of Girls on Fire's 16 Days of Action for No Violence Against Women and Children. I'm here with Liv Cronje. Welcome, Liv, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor.
And thank you very much for sharing your story. It's quite a story. But thank you very much for making the time to speak to us.
So welcome.
Let's start with a difficult question. Who's Liv Cronje?
So to answer that, it's been quite a journey for me actually finding out who I was, because I think I had lost myself so many times over and over. My story is quite traumatic, quite violent, quite gruesome, and I think only today, while I'm getting to do what I love, and while I'm able to listen to the birds outside, it sounds crazy. When people say stop and smell the roses, I literally do that because that's who I am. I need to take in as much beauty and as much goodness as I can, because anything bad trips me up, because I've been through so much. And who I am is just, I think, a girl standing in front of other girls, asking them to fight. And hopefully a good mom, and hopefully a good friend.
That's an awesome description. Okay, tell me about your childhood. There's some good and bad in there. Your father was good, your mom not so much. So tell us how your journey started.
So, that's actually the hard question. Who I am, maybe we'll change that later. Over a year from now, who I am will become different. My childhood, I'm going to try as best as I can to recall the story. A lot of it I do not really remember cognitively. So growing up in the house, when I was born, I was basically born premature. I think I was 23 weeks, so I weighed less than a kilo. I weighed 782 grams. And this caused me to be in hospital in the incubator for about 8 months. My dad was the one who drove through. They were in Britain. I was in the hospital in Pretoria. And Brit is a small town in Northwest. Today it's quite fine. They've got a few shopping centres and stuff, close to Hatties. So I think that's where my bond with my father started. And I think as a trauma specialist today, I now understand why I always felt so alone. I never had the chance to have that, that first year bond with a family. So my stomach valves weren't developed at all, and it took very long before I could eat, which later in the story I'll share with you also became part of that dragged me down in life. So growing up in the house, my mom was, not always, but I can remember around about 5 or 6 years old, something changed. Something changed, and I couldn't sit on her lap anymore, and she wouldn't hug me anymore. And it's that kind of stuff when you go and hug her, you storm onto them and you go and hug them, and they like stiffen up, and that kind of thing started to happen. And she started to break things and scream and shout, and I would find her on the floor, and only later I understood that she was a full-blown addict, alcoholic, addicted to pain pills, addicted to alcohol. And she also then developed schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personalities. So it was quite hard. And watching my father, because he loved her so much, watching him go through that, that pain and that struggle of having to choose her and us,
and just trying to manage the day-to-day running of the household with somebody that's mentally and physically ill at that stage. Must have been very difficult for him.
Yes. And because I was so close to him, I think I always tried to make him okay. So I would do whatever I shouldn't do to annoy my mother, to try and keep him safe. And I think I started with this, started with a little bit of, personality trouble, because I always tried to people please. I always tried to soothe, to protect, and I never had a chance to be me. I didn't make a lot of friends because of this.
You didn't want to bring them home?
No. Not want to bring
them. Because you did mention that your mom would be in a state. She might be naked, she might be on the floor.
Or she might be sitting in the tree, singing.
Okay. Yeah. And that's not something that you as a child want to share with your friends.
Yeah. And it's not, the funny thing about it all is I never disliked her. I couldn't understand. I never thought it was that she didn't love me. Only in my adult years, that's where it set in. But I never thought, I just thought something was wrong with her and I needed to take care of her. I needed to help her. I was very faith-based, and that part in the Bible where they say you must honor your father and your mother. Part of the 10 Commandments to me was absolute.
And it's an Afrikaans thing in a conservative small town like Brits.
Yes.
That is what we were told as Afrikaans kids when we grew up. You have to honor your mother and your father. You do not talk back.
Yes. You can be seen but you cannot be heard. Stuff like that. And so back to mom. I remember there was once when I came from school. I had 2 friends with me, and as we were walking down the road, almost by the gate, I saw that there is a cream-colored body lying on my stoop. What's a stoop? That's your
veranda.
Yes. And it was her, and she was naked, and she passed out, and the cigarette was burning her fingers, and she woke up when we got to her, and it was funny. It was funny to her. And I just decided no friends, no nothing. So I had a lot of imaginary friends. She was quite abusive, maybe not with intention, but there was a couple of times that she knocked me into ICU, and she was quite threatening. You got a bit scared if she made a noise. And then there was the embarrassment. That wasn't really, I wouldn't say egotistical embarrassment, but just, I didn't have a mom to show off at school. And yet I excelled at school, because the more time I could spend at school, I wouldn't be at home.
It really worries me when you matter-of-factly say, she knocked me into ICU. That is not something small. That social workers never get to it, or what excuses did she make that you went into hospital, that you were so badly abused that you went into hospital, ICU? That's not something small, and you just mention it as a passing. That's I think I think for me it became a way to cope, to just go through the factuals, because all of it at the end of the day became so much. I didn't really know this thing called life, and every now and again you were absent from school because you landed in the hospital, or I don't know if it was because of the olden times, and there weren't really so many like social workers and awareness about abuse and stuff, and I always thought it was something that I did wrong, and my father would come visit me and soothe me and keep me quiet, almost. So he was also protecting your mom in a lot of ways.
He had to. I think he was afraid of losing her. I think it was. Today I understand it, that it was all fear. And the thing is, I think what the hardest was for me is not not all the, she would take a plate and break it over your head, and then there wouldn't even be a bruise. So I would have to go to school the next day, and nobody would know.
Is this from that the marks in your face still from that abuse?
No, these are from.
We'll still get to that. Okay.
Yeah.
You say you were sexually abused at 4.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So this, we were at, apparently we were at a party. So this is something that I blocked away, apparently. And only when I was 17 years old, in standard 9, after I left the house, after I tried to commit suicide, I haven't mentioned that to you, all of these things started coming up, and I was seeing a hypnotherapist to help me remember. But my sister was standing outside looking through the window, trying to capture the story. I don't know what her reasoning was, why she didn't run in and save me. I guess it doesn't work that way. She was also just 4 years older than me. But yeah, it was at a party.
She was 8 years old, so
Yeah.
What could
So
you do?
I think she just thought, keep watching us, don't leave. Yeah. But yeah, so it was, it became quite a big thing in my life later on. So I was 4 years old. Apparently there was a braai and a party. My mum was there, my dad was overseas. And this guy who was my uncle, apparently, got hold of me, and he apparently took me into a room, and I was 4, tiny. I was extremely tiny because I was prematurely born. I mean, I'm still a little bit tiny.
You're very tiny still.
It's a tiny.
We had to lift the chair for you.
We had to lift the chair for me. And I, like I said, what came out with the hypnotherapy and from what my sister remembered was that he raped me violently, and he used objects as well. And this resulted in my cervix growing shut and fastened to the back. So my son was a miracle, because I couldn't fall pregnant, and I had a couple of operations. But back to him, my sister took me, she took my clothes off because it was full of blood, and she took one of her dolls and she put that over me. I remember it was a yellow and a white thingy. That's the image that I saw in the hypnotherapy. And we went to Mom, and Mom was absolutely horrified. Like, you do not tell anyone, you understand. You do not tell anyone. You keep your mouth shut. Your father's not going to know about this. And that's when I learned how to pretend and to lie.
So, let's get to the 17 years old, standard 9. Why did you leave the house? What instigated that you actually left your house and you went and stayed with your aunt or something like that?
Yeah. So Mom, shame, and I think what makes it so hard for me, and maybe this helps other people as well, what makes it so hard for me is to actually tell the story of what really happened and how she really was and how much she really hurt me. Not just also the abandonment and the rejection. There was one time when she locked me in a cupboard and she forgot about me, and I was too afraid to open the cupboard, so I thought it was locked, and I stayed there. I stayed there through the night. I weed there, I stayed there. And when my father got home the next day, he was like, "Where's Liv?" And he found me. It was things like that, So it was always this back and forth thing in the house where eventually I got tired of protecting her. Eventually I got tired of covering for her. Eventually I got tired of
Making excuses.
And I had this something inside of me that was screaming, what about me? And nobody knows what's happening to me, and nobody can see. And, it's just something that feels like it's screaming. And, that one day she was drunk again, and for the how manyth time I'd found she would hit her bottles in the most ridiculous places. And I'd found another bottle, and I had thrown her down the sink, and she had gotten upset with me about that, and she was saying to me that I'm not her child. And I was arguing with her, how am I not your child? explain that to me. And she was saying, you're not my child, you're not my child, you're not my child. And she kept saying that. And I think I was so hurt by, because at least, even if I didn't have a mother to show off at school or somebody to make my matric farewell dress, I made my own. All of those things make me Samis. At least I was a child. And now I was not a child anymore. And I think I just flipped that day. I was also on the leaderboard of the school, and I'd come very far. I had lots of academic prestige thingies, awards, and I think I tried to raise my voice and to stand up for myself, and I did it so wrong. I said to her, say that to me one more time and I'll leave. And yeah, 'cause she was always home and I was there after school. And she said it, and she slapped me, and I went to my room and I got my teddy bear and a couple of things, and I think at that point I was smoking secretly. I think I took my ciggies and I think I left.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just walked, and my cousin was playing with his bike and he had a game, and they were in the Flay, which was a little street next to our house, and he saw me walking and he ran up to me and I told him what happened, and he said, okay, come, I'm gonna help you. We need a black bag for your clothes. You're coming without clothes, you're coming to my house. And he walked back with me, and she was standing there, and we took my clothes and we left. And yeah, at night when my dad came home, I guess, I don't know what he found, but he found I wasn't there anymore. So I then, with my mom's sister, she was part of a twin, and I just started staying with her. And my dad, I remember so well, I don't know if he ever paid him money, I don't know the logistics, but he always bought me a carton of cigarettes. And he came to sit with me for about a half an hour a week, and sometimes he would come and surprise me. And that's about what he could do. And yeah, he borrowed me, took my mother's car away from her and gave me her car, which was kind of like bittersweet. And I had to drive the car to school.
Did you have a license? Not yet.
No, not yet. I got one eventually. Yeah.
No, it's so that brings us to a very sad day in your life. In 1998, what happened to your dad? Because it's also not an easy story. It's also not very clear what happened.
Yeah. So I think the big thing for my sister was that she needed to know. She needed to know what happened, and we don't really know what happened that night, but because my mother and my father was there alone, there was another guy living in the house that my father was helping. There were always lots of children and people that he was helping. He was helping the whole world. Absolutely amazing person, my father. But he, this guy was blind, so he just vowed that he didn't see anything. And so it's very unacceptable, the whole situation and the story. But what happened was, we were in the movies and I couldn't sit still, and I had to go out. I couldn't sit still, I had to go out. The same cousin that helped me when I left the house, he's the one that phoned me. I went out to go and smoke a cigarette. I've stopped smoking, so nobody should smoke. And I was standing in the parking lot and the call came through and he said there was a gunshot. The neighbour across the road phoned him and they were trying to get hold of the police. They couldn't find the police, and he called him and he said there was a gunshot, and I think it's Donnie. My dad's name was Don. And I remember I'm like, no, it won't be my dad, it will be my mom, it will definitely be my mom. And he said to me, Liv, you gotta do something. And I got into my little car and I drove through to Brits. I was in Centurion at that time. So when I got there, there was no police yet at the scene. And when I got there, the door was standing wide open. So I ran in, walked in, and I could see as I ran past the kitchen, we had these swivel doors. I could see the blood and the feet, and I knew it was my dad, and I didn't, it's as if I didn't look. It's as if I went straight to my mom, and she was sitting in the corner and she was laughing. And I couldn't understand, and I started crying, and she would say to me, "Why are you crying? It's my husband." And I think what happened to me is I just, today as a therapist I understand it, but I think I just went into a sympathetic survival mode. And I looked again, and I went through the doors, and he was there, my father was there, so there was a gunshot to the head. I tried to not make it like a horror movie, but there was a gunshot to the head. The gun was lying there. The gun that I learned to shoot with, that I very much loved, because it wasn't an unsafe thing for me. And there were footprints as well, everywhere, and it was everywhere on the walls. And my mother said, "I got hold of your sister, she's coming, she's on her way, so don't you think you can," I can't even remember what she said. And the first thing I thought was, if my sister gets here, she can't see this. She can't see this. This is awful. And I moved him, which I think was part of the problem. But I needed to move him out of the way because I wanted to clean. And I started cleaning. And that's as much as I remember. I remember at one point I was busy with the window, and the bullet hole was there. And I picked up his glasses, and they were half of the glass. And it was things like that that I physically remember. I remember touching it. I remember seeing it. But it's almost as if I'm only now starting to feel a connection towards it. I don't think I ever woke up after that. I think a part of me just went.
How old were you?
Went to sleep. So that was 98. So I was 2 years out of matric.
So around 20.
Yeah. Yeah, so the police was there, took him away.
And so they could never find out, and it's probably because you say you moved the body and stuff like that, they never knew if it was suicide or it was murder from your mom's side. There was a docket open against her for 2 years, am I correct?
Yeah, so I don't really know why. And this is the funny thing about my trauma. It always put me into almost like a unresponsive state.
Survival mode.
Wish I could, And today I know why, but I didn't understand then. And I just didn't do much. I tried to make it go away, and I tried to make it better. But I didn't know what to do I didn't understand why the docket went away or quiet. But yeah, the short end of it all was, apparently there was gun residue on my mother's hand, as well as spatter at the back. And so she must have stood, what they said is she must have stood like that in front of him. And there was gun residue on his hand as well. And that's why we don't know whether it was a case of both hands or whether it was a fight. It didn't look like a struggle because everything was okay. My dad was by then very shattered about what was happening with my mom. But there was no suicide note. And he had just found out that my sister was pregnant. And I cannot believe that he would not say a thing. I saw him that morning. He came through to me in Pretoria.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then you met your husband.
Then I met my husband. Yeah.
It was a good time for you.
So yeah, let me just take a sip.
Absolutely.
Just
so we're taking the plaster, we're ripping the plasters off.
all of it, baby. Once. Yeah, it's okay. I know the techniques, and I know, and it's just a story.
It's your story, though.
It's my story. Yeah. Funny thing, if I could just say this, I don't think anybody in this world, on this planet, except for two people, my sponsor, which is, she helps me in my journey in recovery, and my sister knows all of it. Nobody else in the whole wide world. So it's definitely time. Maybe it can help. So where were we? What question were you asking?
It was about your husband.
Yes, okay, right.
Where did you meet him?
Good stuff. So off I went to Pretoria, seeking refuge in the city. Yeah, basically.
Where did you stay in Hatfield? Or?
So yeah. Funny enough, yeah. So funny enough, I packed my cat. I had a snapping tortoise, which I rescued from a guy that was standing at the. It's a long story, but I had a snapping turtle in a fish tank. I had a cat and I had 2 birds, and I had a bag with some clothes. I remember the underwear was important to me, and dresses, and I think I had sandals, and not much else, and my cell phone, which was still a Nokia brick.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I had my, I was driving my Datsun 120Y. I called him Vierpijl, and
Rocket.
I was
in English.
yes. And I was done. I couldn't. Yeah. I think it was right after my father's funeral, which also knocked me because for 2 days long, I remember carrying. The thing.
The coffin.
Yeah. And
your
after
mom?
that, I don't remember.
How was
She was at the back of the church. Yeah.
At the back of the church.
Yeah. She was standing at the back of the church. Yeah. So sorry. What I wanted to say is, the docket was open for 2 years, and there was never any
finality about it.
Yes. It just went quiet. I think my sister tried. She's a lawyer, so I think she tried. And we tried many times. We would sit in front of her and take the bottle away and say, tell us, and I'll give you the drink. Yeah. And she refused. Anyway, so my husband, wonderful times. So off I went with my cat and my birds and my snapping turtle, and off to Pretoria. I'm going to Pretoria because everybody talks about Pretoria, and this is where you can find a job as a waitress. So this was what my plan was. I didn't know what I was going to study, and eventually, back to that, I ended up studying beauty therapy. I tried doing modeling. I worked at a modeling agency, not as the forefront model, but at the back of the curtains. So off I went to Pretoria, and I slept in Hatfield in the parking lot. I remember I had 700 and something rand that I'd gotten out of my mother's bedside table. And I had that, and I bought the guard. I bought him food. I bought him bread and food and nice and whatever. I think it was a hamburger as well. And I bought us food, and I said to him, "You gotta watch over me." And it wasn't then like it is now. So I slept in my car, and the next morning I was out, locked the car, and I was looking for a place. I would take the cats out. It was an absolute nightmare. I remember so well that one night.
Cats are not that easy.
No, especially not with a bird and a snapping turtle in the car.
In a tank.
Yeah, eventually I put the birds in the boot, which is, it's absolutely terrible. I was a terrible human being. But I tried to keep my family close, that sounds mental.
I understand.
Anyway, long story short, so I eventually, I ended up getting a flat. I ended up getting a waitress job. It was South Beach Cafe. They had just opened, and they were in Hatfield Square next to McGinty's, I think, or Hergunter's. One of the, I can't really, and that was it. And that was the job, and so somebody helped me to rent an apartment. And that's where it started. And I was working at South Beach Cafe, and one night he was sitting there, and he was sitting there with a girl. And I was like, hello, like they're a couple, and serving them. And he kept making these remarks. And at one point, I put I was very, like, boundaries, listen, I was very much of a tough cookie, and, like, do you know who I am? I think it was to protect myself. And I put the serving tray down on the table, and said to him, you're talking to me like that in front of your lady? And he's like, oh no, that's not my lady. And it went quiet, and eventually she called me. And she said to me, look, he really likes you, he's asking for your number. So his name was...
So a friend or a...
So she was his ex-girlfriend, but it was like they were just friends. she was going through a very hard time, so he was trying to help her. And he was 9 years older than me. Absolutely beautiful man. And yeah, that's where the journey started. We didn't date right away. I didn't want to, and we were just best friends. We always ended up together, always drove together to the parties. Then he had his girlfriends, I had my boyfriends. We were always together every single day. I eventually moved from my flat to a commune that he owned. And he gave me the whole top floor. And it was just, so a sad part of that is I never got to try and stand on my own 2 feet. I'm getting to do that now, at 45. And so that was it. And I think there's a lot of years that passed and many, many details, but eventually at one point, so now what happened to me when I was 5 years old was now starting to give problems. I had terrible cysts and I was in and out of hospital, and I knew it was connected, but I didn't know what to do, and we eventually found a beautiful doctor.
Are you married to him at this stage?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
No, we didn't
Sorry,
go
I'm jumping
around.
Sorry.
I am the worst example of a person, a mother, a human being, a daughter of God that you could ever get. But
why you say that? It's not true.
According to the book,
There's no book.
Thank you.
There's no book.
Thank you. There is no book. There is no box. There is no book.
This is your life. You do what's good for you. And,
So
that's what's right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So no, I think I kept missioning with him. I kept saying to him, like, so no, we were on a journey. We weren't saying that we were dating. It was me and him against the world, and we were like that. We would get in the car and we would just go, and people would be like, my sister would be phoning and be like, where are you? We haven't seen you for a month. Why are you not picking up the phone? I'd be like, oh, sorry, we're on holiday. And then she would say, like, where on holiday? Why do you even work? Where are you? Where are you even staying? I'm like, no, with Ines. I'm with Ines. I was just always for Ines for years and years and years. And we just had the greatest time of our lives. And I could always talk to him about everything and anything, and him, me. And at one point when he started finding out, there was this one doctor, and he said to me, you won't be able to have children, there's too much damage, blah, blah, blah. We can do reconstructive surgery. And I was just, no, I'm not interested. I wasn't gonna, I was certain already then that these things were gonna fail. It's as if I had that mindset from the abuse of my mother. And when she wasn't near me, I kept hearing that voice, telling me the negative stuff. No, it won't work. No, don't believe in this happy ever after. So I was always not trusting, second guessing, very careful, very high alert, very. But anyway, so we got this beautiful gynecologist, Dr. Marius, and he was very old, very amazing. And he just said, no, we have to do surgery. I'm booking you in, husband, or you okay? Not husband, boyfriend, are you okay with it? Yes, he's okay with it. And we started with the surgery. And then at one point, I wanted to stop. I said, stop. It's too painful. There were too many things coming up for me, trauma-wise. And I only had then told him what happened to me and why these things are happening. And so we went to church the one day, and he said, okay, if we can't operate, then we must pray, because we're going to have a child. And she's going to be beautiful. That's what he said. It was going to be a she. And went to church, prayed, and then I started bleeding, and it was actually quite frightening. We thought something was wrong. So they took me up in hospital, and I was pushed in, and I had to sign for a possible hysterectomy if it was so bad. And I came out, and I was like, there's no cuts, there's no nothing. And he was jumping up and down, tears, and he was like, you're pregnant, they can't operate on you. So, and our little boy, we had a boy.
Let's go.
You never get what you want. I didn't care. I was just, Oh, and we were so in love with him. Yeah, we had our boy, my son, his name is Guardian. And he carries my surname for my father, and he carries his dad's surname for his father. Yeah, he was born, and 3 weeks after that, 3 months after that, we went away, just me and him, me and Ines, and he asked me to get engaged with him. So, yeah, we had just come back. We were back for a month. I started seeing that he's driving funny. He would like slip, his foot would slip off the petrol, and yeah, so big shock, massive shock. It's like joy, pain. And then I took him to the doctor. The doctor said, no, it sounds like something neurological. Let's just go and see a neurologist. Went to the neurologist. Neurologist said, no, something is not right. You're not responding the way you should. Long story short, he was diagnosed with
Multiple
sclerosis. Yeah, and I remember that day sitting down at Sunny Hill Hospital on the steps. That's where I smoked another cigarette again. And I remember sitting down there and everything just came to a halt. And I think from there, nothing felt the same. So something happened to me that day, I'm sure. And I knew that I was going to have to be strong for him, for me. Same story. Like when I grew up, I was going to have to be the strong one. And yeah, if, today I get to teach people, don't do that, because it breaks you. Yeah, and it was a slow, very fast in the beginning. I think it was about 8 months. Then he was in a wheelchair, and it was about another 6 or 7 months after that, then he was bedridden.
So that is quite quickly, but in the meantime you had an accident.
Yes, before we get there. So it was 4 years that he was confined to that bed, and we had little Gardi running around in his nappies, and we had 2 businesses to run, and I was desperately trying to make it work, and I completely failed at all of it. It was just way too much, and I was hurting like hell. And I remember how many times I would look at the trees outside and it would feel blurry, and I never knew, like I was starting to go into deep CPTSD, but I just thought, no, just keep going, you can't give up now. There's this thing inside of me that keeps telling me it's not going to help if you give up. It's not going to help you anything. You have to do this. You absolutely have to do this. And yeah, so whew. Are you still okay? Do you need a glass of water?
I'm fine.
Sorry. No, I'm okay. I just need to breathe in between, I think. Yeah, I think what helps me a lot is if I there's a caption at the end of my video that I made for our company, and at the end it says, "You deserve to be free." And funny enough, that hit me last night, and I thought, I'm focusing on that every single day of my life, because we all do. Yeah, so okay. So
you deserve to be happy as well.
Yes, and I am.
Which is important.
I am getting there. Yeah, I'm peaceful.
That's
peaceful.
A start. That's a good start.
Yeah. Okay, so he was diagnosed. He was bedridden. And through it all, can I just say to you, I can just imagine what my child must have seen, what he must have thought, But yeah, so I was doing some work. I was working very, very late. I think it was 2 weeks, more or less 2 weeks. I was trying to do this one project for my husband. It was going to bring in money. Our medical aid was getting exhausted. It was really, yeah. He was amazing with money, so he had some stuff put away. I don't really know how it worked or how we actually survived. I just know that there was money in the bank.
You could pay the bills.
Yeah, I could swipe it and it would work, which I can't do now anymore. Anyway, yeah, so And I got into the car and I was going. My son was staying with my mother-in-law that weekend.
You had a good relationship with your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She loves my boy very much. And I drove through, and I had to drive through to Magnolia Dal, which is Pretoria, right? And we were in Midrand. Yes, correct. So I drove through, and this was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd also had, so by that time I was drinking wine, like by the glasses full, because I couldn't fall asleep at night, which is an excuse, but yeah, I was drinking wine. It was helping me to fall asleep, and it was helping me to just relax a bit, and God knows what I was thinking. So I had a couple of glasses of wine earlier that night. I'd finished the work, and 3 o'clock I drove through to Magnolia Dal, and it was a friend of mine, and he was going to help me with the website part of stuff. I was doing the design stuff. We were planning a launch. Long story short, I drove back. As I drove back, I was wearing jeans and pluckies, flip-flops. What's it in English?
I think
Flip-flops.
Serious.
Yeah, and I drove back, so I was wearing jeans and flip-flops, and I'm convinced that a guy came around the corner with his trolley. The police said they could never find him. They could never find the guy that I swerved out for. But I was convinced there was a guy. But as I saw the guy in front of me, I was crossing the bridge by Magnolia Dal, where you go back now to Midrand, away from Hatfield. And that bridge ends in a T and a huge hill and a tree. And I ended up against that willow tree. I think in the hospital, I remember one of the things that told me I was out, like unresponsive for about 2 weeks. It shattered my left leg. I also broke my foot trying to kick the door open. So when I came to, and this is quite funny, is that the windshield was now out and the airbag had gone off, and my face was bruised and bleeding, and my nose was like sore, everything, but you don't feel the pain at that moment. And the windshield was out, and the willow tree had gone, it derooted onto the car. So it had fallen onto the car, and the leaves was hanging in, and it was dusty. And I remember opening my eyes and thinking, oh my goodness, now I'm in heaven. No. There's a big mistake. Can't be in heaven now. I remember that so clearly, because that just, that's who Liv is too. I needed to take care of my child and my husband. I couldn't be in heaven then. I ended up in hospital. There was a guy with one of these Ausfuls, what's the guys with the...
Vulture?
Yeah, with the pickup trucks.
Oh, yes. Okay.
He heard the call on the radio, and he was there first. And he tried to help me out of the car.
Vehicle,
so
yeah.
I have terrible scars on my leg, because the tibia and the fibia was out of the leg, and my foot was starting to sever when he pulled me out of the car. So he left me, and I remember he was just I remember this he had this cross around his neck, just dangling here in front of me, and I remember his voice. So I ended up in a wheelchair, and by the 6th operation that I'd failed, and the last doctor that I saw wanted to amputate the leg, because he said there was no way, there was an open wound, and it was just getting worse. I think it was a type of I don't know, but my husband and I had decided that I'm going to go to my sister in Mossel Bay to take a break, and there was
He was bedridden, I
he
guess.
was bedridden, and there was a stay-in nurse staying with him, and now I know, today I know, he was trying to get me away from him because I'd just come back in time before he died. So I now I know that, and but yeah, so I left with my son in the wheelchair on the airplane, and off we go to Mossel Bay, and yeah, this is where I ran into a plastic surgeon who pro bono helped me, him and his wife. And
An angel, if you really want, because
yeah,
who does that? There's not a lot of people that does that.
how does it? Who that? And how does it happen? I mean, I had to go through all of that and get away from my husband to end up in Mossel Bay in the same aisle in Checkers, with the kids running into my leg with a plaster dripping with blood, like.
And he offered to
So
help
that
you
he
on
could
it.
see, yeah. And just in time, because apparently there was infection already in the blood because the bone marrow, yeah. And
He saved your leg.
yeah, he went in, he made a overflap or something, he took a patch out of my bum, planted the skin on there, and it grew and it closed. Yeah, and it was like, I think 9 months later, almost a year, I could walk again.
But you went back to Pretoria or Midrand, and
Yeah.
your husband died.
Yeah, yeah, a few months later, yeah, he had passed on, and yeah, there's a bit of a twist to the story, that I didn't really mention to you as well, but yeah, by that time, my mother-in-law, his mom, had gotten concerned, and she had moved in out of our house into her house, and yeah, so when I came back, he wasn't of such a state. I think she thought I left him there, and I didn't. He told me to go, but yeah, that's when I went into my addictive state. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's not a patient, so we can carry on. So when I went into my addictive state, that was one of the things that I was carrying very heavily.
Yeah.
Is that guilt of maybe I did leave it, you know. Anyway, so yeah, and
You came home to an empty house.
mhm.
And that's where your real addiction started, am I correct? And it was a downward spiral from there
Yeah.
after he died.
Yeah.
Boyfriend after boyfriend, and then one final one that,
That broke the camel's back.
what happened there?
Yeah, and it's so.
At this stage, your son was permanently at your mom-in-law, am I correct? When did this happen?
Slowly but surely, yes, eventually. I think it was I can't really remember the year, so it must have been. He was still in secondary, large school, secondary.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
When
primary
he
school.
started living with my mom-in-law,
Okay.
yeah, and I got him back just before his high school ended. So it was 5 years that he was staying by her, that this disease went rampage.
So we talk about that you've got 8 times more chance to be addictive,
Yes.
addict,
Yes.
if one of your parents have been an addict.
Yes,
And something that you didn't like in your mom, that's what happened to you.
yeah. So it's quite interesting how we mirror, and because we don't know the other solution, when we start to lose focus and we start to operate less in consciousness and we start to operate in survival instinct.
It's what I call, it's nearly like a
You go
reptile
back
mode.
to-
It's that
Yes,
reptile brain where you just
absolutely.
do whatever.
You go to your past reference framework, and what shows up is the memory of mom. And like, okay, then I knew it killed her pain, I just wouldn't carry on drinking. Because to me, it's like she never loved me enough to stop drinking. How was I wrong? So this beast took hold of me, and I was gone. I was gone. Every single little bit that I had left of me broke. I didn't care what happened to my body.
Was it alcohol and pills?
Alcohol, drugs, pills, anything I could get my hands on. It was just anything that would make my head silent and make my heart stop feeling that absolute anxiety and that darkness. I would open my eyes and just, I wouldn't know, you know, who do I talk to with today? Nobody's around.
You went down to 21 kilograms.
Yes.
That is like nothing.
Yes.
You're a small person, but 21 kilograms, that is anorexic. It's
Yeah, completely. I think I fitted in some of my son's clothes. I remember wearing a ski pant and it was baggy. I had sores where you see the marks here. It's sores everywhere. My hair was thin and yellow and grassy, and when I eventually started getting into recovery, I had a little boopy from the malnutrition. I never ate. I don't care if I could find food or not. I think the thing is also, you know, when I landed up with the abusive boyfriend is, like I said to you, I was feeling so guilty, because the moment you turn addict, you start to feel the guilt and the shame of it. You're so ashamed of yourself. You're so guilty, and this thing inside of you just wants more and more and more, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And you almost go into a mode where you don't care about yourself, and therefore you can't be around others, because you will try to care, you will try to love them, but you won't be able to. And I think so with the abuse from that relationship, I ended up on the street, so there was that as well. And it's just, I think, you know, there's a stigma about addiction, which is so absolutely horrifying. And it's not to say that a person has no will or no power to turn it around. Look, you need to seek help, and that's your responsibility. But it's a thing that's much greater than you. And I ended up with nothing.
But he nearly killed you.
Yes.
Ended up in hospital.
Yeah. I ended up, for the last 3 years, I desperately tried to stop. So it was 10 years in and out of recovery, in and out, which the first few years of the 10 years, I didn't know then I was an addict or an alcoholic. In the end, it was alcohol that took me down.
But you had a stroke, your body just basically said,
yeah,
if you want to put it in Afrikaans, tot hier toe nie verder nie.
Tot hier toe nie verder nie, dis nou klaar. Yeah. So what happened was, it was in one of my desperate attempts. Look, I went to rehab, I was at a halfway house, and I just couldn't get a hang of it. Every now and again, all of the pain would come back, and I had to run. I had to run for my life. I just couldn't. And my body got sicker and sicker. My liver was on 40%. My one kidney was barely working on 20%. And like I said, I was so thin, so sick. Mentally, I was extremely ill. I remember the last thing that I remembered then was leaving my house, and remember my mom was schizophrenic. So leaving my house and remembering that I was locking the door, and 2 weeks later, friends of mine that came looking for me because I wasn't at my recovery meetings found me next to the road, next to the sidewalk, unconscious, wearing another man's clothes, big blue jacket, no shoes, no purse, no wallet, no ID, beaten up, blue, bleeding, coccyx broken. Then I was put in hospital, and then I heal again. And then I was told again, no, you can't see your son, you can't come back, and then off I went again. And that was the story of my life. I would have a job, I would be able to keep it for 2 weeks, and then I would find another one because I would be fired, because I'm like that. And what I realized today is my self-worth was so broken that I didn't have a reason to quit anymore. So there's my son's name, and this is what addiction does, is I was hoping that if I had his name, I would know that if I bring the glass, it would stop me, but I just learned to drink with the other hand.
That's a very interesting remark. But you had you had 2 strokes, and
yes,
then
so
for 4 days nobody found you because you broken your contacts with other people.
Yeah, I had pushed people away. I think because of shame, because of guilt, because of accountability. If there were people in my life, I had to be accountable. But also because of distrust, and I didn't know who people were anymore. Like everything and everyone seemed to hurt, and I had no way that I was healing, and it all just became larger and larger. So yes, in one of my desperate attempts to come clean again, I had now locked myself in my little room. I was renting a room in Centurion. My son could come and visit by then, and I had to come clean. I had to come clean because I was seeing him, and I desperately tried. And every time I stopped, I got so sick. Like you would shiver and you would body was done. And that night in my sleep, apparently I had a TIA, trans-ischemic attack, silent heart attack. And as I got up somewhere in the early morning, I remember standing up and my whole body went around and hit the floor. And lying on the floor. And because I isolated, just nobody came looking. And I laid there for 4 days.
But you survived.
And I remember for me, the last thing I thought was, after everything that I fought and I had to endure, and is this how it ends? And I begged God to allow me that it doesn't end like this. And I said to him, I can make a change, I can make a difference. And that's basically why I do what I do today, because I have a job to do.
So you got up, somebody found you after 4 days?
Yes, so my landlord, where I was renting, she came after a few days, so she was used to me seeing me at the gates every now and again, like collecting the bills they were delivering from the pharmacy or whatever. Nobody knows this. And she was walking up to my apartment, and she immediately saw something was wrong. I don't know if she smelled the smell. She must have. And it was very gruesome. Like I was lying in vomit and urine and blood and feces. My esophagus had started to tear from all of the throwing up. I had tried to pull my blankets off of my bed to put it under my body so that my body doesn't lie in the liquids, because I was afraid of going raw. And I couldn't move. My body couldn't move. And I was too sick. It was literally
real rock bottom.
Yeah. I tried. I remember as I was lying on the floor like this, there was a can of baked beans there. And I remember my Oma used to say, if you eat 2 or 3 baked beans a day, it can save your life. And I was thinking, okay, I need to get a hold of that baked beans and I need to open that can. And right next to it was a bottle of white wine. There was this much left. And I thought, if I take 1 sip, maybe I'll feel better and then I can get the baked beans. And I remember that story all the time playing through my head. And then I would be like, God, Jesus, please just help me. And that was all. And eventually, when she found me, my landlord found me. She had phoned the ambulance, and I remember that's where my consciousness went. I remember being on the stretcher, and that was it. I was in the hospital for a long, long time. I had to.
How did you get to where you are today?
Grace.
You're 5 years that you're totally clean now, but how did you get here?
So
she tried before and it didn't work. What made the difference this time? Rock bottom?
Definitely rock bottom, and definitely hope, and definitely somehow like I said, when I asked God that night or that morning, don't let it be like, to me it was just the most terrible thing. Like, you lie after everything you've been through, and I was hearing this in my head, And I feel like I've got a job to do because my life was spared. I cannot tell you how dark the days in addiction was, the stuff I've seen and the stuff I've allowed myself to go through and to be done to unto, because you're desperate. And something inside of me I just had to fight. I just couldn't give up. Something inside of me was, I don't know. And I think that responsibility that I took up instead of the guilt and the shame, that time made the difference. And the fact that I know I have a job to do. I'm not sure what it is. Like every day of my life, I try to figure it out right from the start. I still fight for my life every day. There's no need or craving to drink or use anymore. But the emotions for us are tough. It's hard to handle our emotions, and I'm completely in the program. So I go to meetings, I have a sponsor, I still do step work, and I've been doing that for 5 years. And I've got a very strong connection with my higher power, which is God.
And your son has
my
back
son
with you?
that was placed back in my care. It's just, I think there I fell in love with life again. I could not believe. I remember I was still staying in a sober house at that point, and the court was saying to me, "We cannot give him back to you if you're staying in a sober house." And I said to them, "But I can't move out because." So I did 3 years of service while I was studying further, while I was studying trauma, unpaid. Day and night I was on call in the rehab, in the sober house, in the halfway
So you
house.
went and studied?
I kept working, and I had clients, and I had patients, and I practiced, and yes.
So what was it, a degree, diploma?
So it's a certified clinical trauma specialist. So we call it the CCTS, and yeah, it's a mixture between psychology and also holistic. And like I said, what I do, it's a degree, and what I do is I try to take what helped me. I try to take the things that changed me and saved my life, because I had to work very hard at.
You had nothing. You started with no money.
Nothing, and no one to talk to, and you know, I came into the fellowship and people were hugging me, and I was like, "What do you want from me? Don't touch my body." And it was just so amazing. Like, and people would say, "No, don't. We're just hugging you. Welcome. Keep coming back." And I'm like, "Keep coming back. You want me back? Like, why would you want me back? You don't even know who I am." And it was just that kind of, all of a sudden, I had people around me that cared, that was the same as me, that also felt broken, that also felt left outside, that also felt different. And I think a lot of my healing comes from going through it myself, because I now know that it wasn't that my mother didn't love me. She honestly just couldn't stop, and she went crazy. I started going crazy completely. I was hearing things on my roof, and I would hide in the cupboard. I would sleep in the cupboard. Funny.
Yeah. Not so funny, but yeah. So tell us about Core, the place that we're sitting at now.
We're sitting
and what is
at
it?
now.
What is it's on your shirt, but consequences of recovery.
Yes.
Please tell us where that
So
term come from.
it's beautiful. It's so pretty.
Very pretty.
So Core, it's quite a tricky name, because
It means a lot of things.
Yeah, it means a lot of things. So Core is stands for consequence of recovery. And when we say recovery, we don't just talk about a recovery from addiction. We also talk about recovery from trauma, from behavioral disorders, from panic, anxiety, depression, anything that can feel wrong in your soul. Because I had a good taste of most of them.
Like everything about.
If people say to me, "You're crazy," I'd be like, "Oh, that's such a compliment, thank you." Yeah, so Core is basically a dream connected to a passion, connected to a desperate heart's desire, because I think, and some people call it selfish. I think, I must admit, it possibly is a bit selfish, because if I had to go through all of that pain and it wasn't for nothing, and I can do something with that and I can help other people, then at least it wasn't for nothing, you know, like I didn't, doesn't make sense.
It makes absolute sense.
Yes, but like I said to you earlier, Nana, I just, damn it, man, I just want people to not hurt so much, because there's so, you know, we all say the world is so bad, there's so much bad stuff in the world, and life is so unfair, and yeah, it is, because we're not in heaven yet, and you know, this is what you're going to get, so you better be equipped. And if
there's so many stresses around right now in the world, in South Africa.
Yes, absolutely. Women, children, even men, people hurt so much, and so consequence of recovery. So when you suffer a consequence of something, the consequences of me being brutally raped when I was 4 years old, I said that just now. I said that for the first time in my life, holding my head up high. So thank you for helping me share that. The consequence of that was me struggling to have children, right? So when trauma happens to you, when bad stuff happens to you, we lose something, there's a consequence. Now, when we come into recovery, you don't just let go of those things. We see trauma as a bad thing. We see all of these things as a bad thing. And I know it's very sore, I know it's very, I know it's very unfair, but what I try to help people with is try to see it in a different light. Because if you overcome it and you come through it, you get to stand on top of a stage, you get to hold somebody's hand, you get to talk people off a ledge, you get to hold somebody in your arms, and you get to talk them through it. And that is a huge honor and a privilege. You know, it gives you so much purpose, and it's something that I never had in my life. So the consequences of recovery for me is you take that same bad thing and you turn it into something good. So we deal with the consequence. You bring the consequence to me, and it becomes part of your recovery, in whether it is in mental health, trauma, or addiction.
And how long have you been doing this?
Oh, very short, too short. So I have an amazing, amazing woman in my life. I don't know how that happened. I landed helping out here over December. Nearly landed on my second rock bottom, clean and sober. The facility that I worked for, it's just, yeah. And I landed here, and I met Auntie Heather Lawler, and she is the owner of CBT. She owns a couple of businesses, runs FUF, and I'm currently sitting inside. This is my one-room practice inside her entire big office. And I don't know, her story is very much the same. She's also gone through a lot of ANA. She's also shown tremendous victories. She's a remarkable woman, and I don't know if she saw something or had overheard what my dreams were, or and one day she just said to me, I want to talk to you, and she said, let's do this. And off we went, and we started CORE, and it's a registered PTY LTD. We decided to do that so that we can do more with it. We want to be able to help people, push people, maybe enable people to get work, and so it's massive, it's huge, it's
fantastic. And you're now a victor and not a victim anymore.
Absolutely correct. And you know what's absolutely amazing? I got to somewhere in recovery, I got to buy my own car, which is little Uno. I got to buy her cash, also by the grace, and I drive in that Uno, I climb in that Uno from Benoni every morning. I drive here, and I've got my sunglasses on, and I've got music on, and I'm holding the steering wheel, and maybe I'll chat to my boy quickly to see how's he doing, how's his day going. And it's not it's a gratitude that is, my cells are saturated, it's in my bones. I can't even explain it. I hope that for every single being that has gone through so much pain, that they will find that after that. It's so possible.
When we started talking earlier, and it's something, just appreciate the birds out there. When I wake up in the morning, it's nice to listen to the birds.
Yes.
Even the hardy-daws,
yes.
Which not a lot of overseas people, but we've got two hardy-daws that's been living in the tree behind our bedroom.
So
and But I usually wake up before them, but it is you just enjoy those things that gives you pleasure in life.
Yes. Yes.
Stop and smell the roses.
Stop and
That's
smell
what
the
you said earlier.
Yeah, and it's funny how many birds I see here.
I've just listened to some when we were talking here just now.
Yeah. So in one of my very, I was a brat. I was such a brat in rehab. I listened. I always had these sides to me. I would be like this beautiful, conforming human being, and then I would be no. and it's beautiful because that's your fire. You must just learn to use it right, and you do the same for women. But yeah, and somebody in one of my stints and tantrums, they said to me, hey, calm down, let's look for a bird. And we found a bird. And it became my job every day to look for a bird. It was part of my recovery. I had to look for a bird because that pulled me back to, I'm not this traumatized person, I'm not this victim, I'm not, the world's gonna end.
It grounded you.
I found a bird. And every single day, sometimes I find a whole flock of bird, and then it gets me in tears, and yeah.
So what is your message to other women for the 16 days of action? Because you did take action.
Yes.
Without action, you would not be where you are now.
Yes, you're right. It's beautiful that you say that. So I wrote a little letter to the women out there, because I'm 45 and my brain was saturated with alcohol. I don't think I remember a whole sentence. Can I read?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah. So to everyone out there, right? To everyone out there, you have to fight, no matter how much your heart is breaking. Standing up and letting your voice be heard and telling your truth. If you survived whatever came to hurt you, if your heart is still beating, you still have a purpose. When that voice of fear comes telling you that you are not good enough, that you will not make it out, tell it to be quiet and believe that you will, even if you cannot see it or feel it at that moment, but that you will make it through. The word believe is a verb that means to accept that something is true, even when there's no proof. So I'm asking you today to believe. Even if there is no proof, you make that decision. What you believe will be your reality, and when we get hurt, we lose something. But when we stand up, we gain something again. There are many others just like you that are fighting back and standing their ground. And you're not alone.
Thank you so much. And we will share your details, and I hope you're going to help a lot of other ladies.
Yay!
Give you a hug. Oh, it was amazing. It was really good to talk to you.
I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. Countless hours on the range, I am responsibly armed. I am your equal. I've empowered myself, I have practiced and trained. Fear won't control me. With my sisters in arms, we will make ourselves heard. We'll stand together. I'm a girl choice. I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. We're girls on fire. We're not victims. We're girls on fire. We'll stand out.